Sorry to disturb you at this hour, but I have something you want.
A new TV?
It broadcast programs no one had ever seen.
Wednesday at 9, don't miss an all-new episode of The Silencer of the Lambs.
It's incredible that even in the 90s, there were times, a few times, where if I had the opportunity to go to the movies, I would go, and it wouldn't always have to be something that there was some hype around, or that I hyped myself, and that there were a few times where it just kind of had to decide, like a couple days before we went, like on what we're going to see. Like we do now, we do that now, pretty much. Mm-hmm. We've been doing that for like 10 years. Like, we want to go to the movies, so we'll just go to whatever's playing. It wasn't like something like,
this is coming out on this day.
Months and months of, mark the calendar and collect all the reviews and magazine and newspaper clippings of it. Like, Stay Tuned was kind of like that. Like, I had the opportunity to go to the movies that weekend, and I was like, I'd be curious to know what it was up against, because it was probably maybe just other stuff that I love now, or just. But anyway, that wasn't like, oh boy, Stay Tuned is coming out. Like, it's like, kept seeing commercials for it. Had heavy TV commercials. Yeah, okay. Looks fun. I get the premise the premise in the commercials was easy. Like, well, it's the Three's Company's guy, and it's the Mork and Mindy girl, and should be fine, right? It's funny that these movies, all these controversial comedies are all cult movies now, and everyone loves them. But back then, they were just kind of on the sidelines. I actually don't know what the critical response was to it. I can't imagine it was glowing. If I had to guess, I mean, we're old enough to know now, and we know enough about movies enough now that we can kind of guess what critics will think of or did think of any movie. I think I get that algorithm pretty much now. Like, so I wasn't aware then.
I mean, I can't say it's because it was for a younger audience, because there have been children's films that they've liked, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It is a children's film, isn't it? It's a children's film, but it has a lot of adult themes.
But
like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which again was critically adored.
And Roger Rabbit, I think, is a better movie, I think.
Yes.
But what I agree with what you're saying, because what they probably said, which is a little bit what I would say about this movie, not about the other movies you talked about, because you're right. Like, when you say that, like, it's a kids movie, but it's too much of an adult movie, is exactly what I always hear about Little Monsters. That's the biggest one. Siskel and Ebert both didn't like Beetlejuice. Did you know that?
No.
They didn't like Beetlejuice for that very reason. Like, oh, it's too much of this thing, and it's not enough of this thing, or there's not enough good balance. And people use that phrase. It's amazing people our age, the way they regurgitate stuff that critics would say, like the phrase, one of my least favorite phrases, which should be a great list. One of my least favorite phrases is, "This movie doesn't know what it wants to be." I hate that shit. Because I love movies like that have different tones and are like all over the place. I really must say, oh, good night, sweetheart.
Wednesdays at 9. 3 Men and Rosemary's Baby.
My complaint about this movie would be that it wasn't enough of either. It wasn't dark enough, and it wasn't funny enough.
Yeah.
It should have been a lot of both of those things. It should have been more of those things. The whole movie is like an SNL sketch that runs too long.
In order to assist you in your efforts, we have located a photograph of your wife to show our viewers.
Hey, where did that come from?
She's a vixen, Mr. K. Hell's a babe. Tentpole. Lady Naval, we salute you.
It's funny. It's funny. There's so many ideas in this movie. That's another thing. There's too many ideas in this movie. There's a lot of ideas in this movie, and I love that they're all there. I wish it could have been 35 minutes longer. And maybe a soft R.
I know, a little tighter, maybe, too. Even though
longer and tighter?
Longer and tighter.
Those are good words. It's a diet soda. Like, it's not strong enough to be a full sugar soda. So it's not like a soda experience. But if you're thirsty and you want to drink something hard and fast, I think that's what Stay Tuned is. I knew John Ritter as like anyone, I guess, from Three's Company.
Come and knock on our door. Come and knock on our door.
Where have you been?
We've been waiting for you.
I knew Pandora a lot because I watched Mork and Mindy a lot.
I find that fascinating. I've never seen that either.
Oh, when Mork and Mindy was on Nick at Night in like the late 80s, a little bit of the early 90s, to kids our age, it's like a Robin Williams show. Like that was a major deal, and so I watched it all the time because it really was. You know, it was great that he had it. Like growing up, a Robin Williams movie was a big deal because you got to see him do his thing for 90 minutes. But that he had his own show for a while doing Robin Williams stuff was very exciting for me anyway. So I knew her from that, and then I got the sort of gimmick, I guess, about having two TV stars be together in the TV movie. I should probably talk about Peter Hyams, who was film careers like all over the place. But at the same time, it really fits into what he did. He directed Running Scared. He directed the Narrow Margin remake with Gene Hackman. Executive producer of Monster Squad. He often acted as director of photography in a lot of his movies. He co-wrote a lot of his movies. He was like an auteur of sorts, and it's this goofy, lowbrow, sort of one-note comedy. Yeah. Felt most like his baby. Like he was putting his soul into this, and it's weird that it was this sort of. You can feel it,
yeah.
Even though it's not, like I said, it's not strong enough in any of the areas I've mentioned. It feels strong, and like this was like important to him. I wonder if that's true. I'd love to know. I'd love to talk to him. Talk to him about it. I don't know if it has a commentary. I don't even think it has a. It should. That's a movie that deserves some sort of special.
Yeah.
Like a Shout Select or an Arrow.
For many decades, I was the king of this planet. Our people were happy and their lives were good. But also, alas, we were a planet of idiots. Then, one day, the most evil, bloodthirsty, fearsome villain our planet had ever seen seized power, imprisoned me, and renamed the planet after himself. His name? Todd Spango.
Mom and Dad Saved the World. Originally called Dick and Marge Save the World, right up until the point of its release, actually. I don't know the story behind why the title changed. I have two guesses. One, they didn't like Dick in the title. I'm serious. They didn't want to. And if I had to think the way they think, I would say they didn't like Marge in the title because Simpsons were like going strong then, and why do I feel like that would have been misleading or something? Or maybe just that title sucked. Because it's funny, because Mom and Dad Save the World, you don't think of them as a mom and dad because the kids have like no function in the movie whatsoever. I think they have like 45 seconds of screen time.
Yeah,
it has nothing to do with
off, right?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the fact that they're parents, because that's not doesn't really have anything to do with the plot. So Greg Beeman, who directed it, who was, I think, best known for License to Drive, had this burning desire to do a science fiction movie with practical effects. And if you look at that movie, it's some of the best practical effects of the 90s.
You're a cute little fella.
lot of it's borrowed from like goofy 50s
sci-fi, and that was the thing. And I've talked about that recently. How 50s science fiction, because all these directors who grew up in the 50s and 60s are suddenly like stealing everything that they knew and using it in a newer way. It's funny that this whole series revolves around movies that were released within like the same 5-year period, I think. And I don't know much about what critics said then, but I can't imagine they were too hip to it. Again, is it too dumb? It's a dumb movie.
Yeah.
I can't remember it even released in theaters. It was just on TV. It was on HBO every 17 minutes.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Was it? So it was just too silly.
Too silly. This was this was the 90s. Yeah.
That were running
different mentality back then.
Yeah.
Because back then, professional film critics were old codgers.
Yeah.
Now, it's whoever you know on Twitter.
Yeah.
It's
a lot of DVD covers will just have quotes with no.
Yes, exactly. One of the best films ever made said, "No one." Said at Big Johnson 69. Or, whatever. We're on a real Jeffrey Jones kick. Can't think of that.
I thought that too.
Yeah.
We didn't kill him, did we?
I know. Can't think of him in too many other. This is only leading role. Leading role.
Leading role.
He's a title role.
Yeah.
He's dad. He's Dick.
Dad. He's Dick.
The cast. I sit and think of everyone in the cast. Okay, so Jeffrey Jones, Terry Garr, and John Lovitz, Kathy Ireland, Wallace Shawn, Eric Idle, Thalmus Rasulala, which is fun to say. It's the same as Stay Tuned. You can feel. I remember when Ocean's 12 came out and everybody hated it, but they said, but you can definitely feel how much the actors and the director are having fun. Like you can feel that on a movie like this, even though it's like it feels so heavy in terms of like production and makeup and stuff, and I'm sure there was a lot of stress there. You can definitely feel the director's sort of passion for it. It is funny though.
Yeah, it is funny.
I think John
Lovitz is I think best in this.
Yeah. Gosh, the effects are really good.
Yeah.
And the costumes are really good. Like, you go out of your way to make stuff look stupid. That's a slippery slope, and that's why I think it could be tough for some people.
Yeah.
He goes to a planet of stupid people.
Yeah.
so that's be careful, man.
And dogs and fish.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, I kept thinking about how good the dogs look, but the fish looked really good too.
Yeah.
So before anything, this movie was offered to Greg Beeman to direct. He declined based on the ideas of what they wanted to do. I think the movie that they made and that came out is the direction they were going in, and what he knew of Super Mario, he already knew the direction they wanted was wrong. He's like, no, you gotta go big on this. You need a huge budget and create this whole different magical wonderland of however every person who ever saw it, every fan, anybody who ever played Super Mario knows what a Super Mario movie should look like. And that's what he had in mind. And they were like, no, we can't do that, sorry. And so he passed. So the movie went to the people who did the Max Headroom television show. It was a directing team, I believe. The weirdest thing about it is that I don't know, like we were saying, like critics were old codgers. I don't know how many of them were familiar with Super Mario or invested or obsessed or engrossed in Super Mario, because that's the way fans approached it. Critics who were just sort of aware that video games existed and then approached this movie just as a standalone science fiction fantasy story where these two guys go into this world where
they're creatures.
They're creatures and whatever. I can't imagine what they must have thought of it.
You can say the same thing about Phantom Menace.
Like Phantom Menace, yes. Like no one who's aware of Star Wars, you go into Phantom Menace. Yeah, that's a beautiful correlation. If you start at episode 1 in Star Wars and you go into Phantom Menace, you're like, what? What is going on? So yeah, like that, very much like that. You take a pop culture thing and then you reconfigure it into something that has only very mild connections to that thing. As a movie on its own without any connection to the video game, which I try to pretend in my mind and role play that scenario where like, let's just approach this as a movie. It's still dull and dumb, I guess. The plot is dumb.
It should have been more fun. Like, it should have been a pizza movie.
Yeah, a pizza movie, yeah. Yeah, it totally should.
Because it's not, it's a failure.
There's so many things to address. There's too many things. I remember. It's funny that I had the same reaction to the fact that Bob Hoskins was in it, that Bob Hoskins had to being in it. He said, because he had just done Roger Rabbit and then Hook, and then he was going to do this movie, and he's like, why I don't really want to keep doing these kids movies. Like I don't want to turn into Dick Van Dyke. That was his reaction to it. And then he had some, I don't know if his own child or a niece or nephew or somebody, like usual, like, no, you got to be in this movie because this is a big deal. And so that's why he went for it. And granted, he can look like Mario, and sort of embody whatever Mario is supposed to be. I certainly had the same reaction that everyone had with John Leguizamo. Like, that's not Luigi. I don't know Luigi, but that's not Luigi.
Yeah.
Name? Mario. Last name?
Mario.
Okay, what's your name?
Luigi.
Luigi?
No, Luigi Mario.
Okay, look, how many Marios are there between the two of you?
There's 3. There's Mario, and Luigi Mario.
Their original director had the right idea. Granted, those first Mario movies had a story, but it was really just trying to get through the levels to get to the end to save the princess. And how do you turn that into a movie? Well, you could have asked me or any other 10-year-old in the country or world at that point, how do you make this a movie? And they would have all had a better answer than what they came up with. Even if it was just a panning left to right, walk along this screen to get to the end of the movie, that would have been more satisfying. It would have been more logical. It would have been more engrossing. It would have been more clever. Even if they just completely ripped off the game of getting from A to B. It would have been more clever than... It's like they rewrote something they had lying around.
Yeah.
But they weren't strong enough to make it good. That's something...
And the time has passed, because can you imagine if they made it now?
If they made it now, it'd be just as wrong, but in different ways. That's why I literally stay up nights thinking about Legend of Zelda movies and how right they could be and how wrong they could be, and I know when it happens if it'll be in the wrong way. And I was in such a Dennis Hopper mood too around then, because I was so enamored with him in Speed. It's like, oh, what a great villain. Yeah, but I didn't want Dennis Hopper. I wanted King Koopa.
Yeah.
I didn't want Easy Rider in this movie.
Mr. Clampett, there's more petroleum in your swamp than there is in all of Kuwait.
That bad, huh?
We're going to pay you $1 billion.
For the good of this here family, I'm moving us to Beverly Hills.
I don't know if you remember it as well as I do. The way people embrace comic book movies the way they do nowadays it was that same amount of passion that they used to repel TV show adaptations in the 90s. It was with that same amount of energy that anytime that Hollywood adapted an old TV show into a movie, people would like literally vomit on themselves. Like, ugh, another TV show movie? Ugh. The same way they ejaculate on their own faces now when a new Marvel movie comes out. I was a little kid, I thought it was neat that they were turning old shows into movies. I don't know how any critic could have thought that this was a dumb movie while also having ever seen one episode of the Beverly Hillbillies.
So you're condemning this movie is also condemning the show.
Yeah.
Your whole idea is a piece of shit.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, like, because usually the angle was how dare you desecrate this beloved institution of the television we grew up with this nonsense, which was usually the approach with a lot of these things. And I can't be certain, but it would be horrific if anyone said such a thing about the Beverly goddamn Hillbillies, which was, I wouldn't say it was, well, it could be as dumb as Gilligan's Island, but it was dumb. But this movie was like so much better than for as dumb as this movie is, and it's dumb. Let's say specifically for a Penelope Spheris movie, she was hit or miss. She was give and take. There are some moments in this movie where it was like just that sort of Benny Hill sort of humor, where it's like, no, this is dumb. I don't want to look at this. But then there are laugh out loud moments. The casting, oh my god, the casting was so spot on. I think that was the whole point of redoing these things in the 90s. Stuff like the Flintstones and the Brady Bunch movie, where it was like, let's wow them with the cast list with the poster and to see who's in it, so people could be like, oh, of course, John Goodman as Fred Flintstone, of course. This is already a great movie. Then you go see it, and you're like, oh, you didn't really do anything with it. But the casting in this movie was so wonderful and so spot on. Not just because everyone sort of matched the people in the original, but that it was such a great cast of actors.
Especially your beloved.
And, well, yes.
Erica
I say like Erica Leniak.
Young lady! I think we found a new team captain. Sorry, Derek. You're demoted.
Around that time, in that role of Ellie Mae, like Anna Nicole might have been more believable, but she's not rugged enough. But yeah, Erica Leniak killed it. To see Jim Varney doing something else, even though he's still playing kind of a hick exploitation kind of character, which is what his character was. But I always wish there could be more of that. Like, like any time Paul Rubens was in something else,
I know
it was always like, oh, it's so good to see him do something else, and isn't he so talented and wonderful, and I just love him so much, and you sort of get that sense with this movie, like, oh, like it's so great to see Jim do something else. Last time I watched it, I don't know, it never occurred to me before that Lily Tomlin, Dolly Parton, and Dabney Coleman are all in it, in the same scene, which is a legitimate 9 to 5 reunion. And I was so pleased by that, and I just hope that was relevant to someone, at least to them, while they were doing it. Like, hey, how are you? And Cloris Leitchman, who since she was young has had a career of playing old women, and so as Granny was like the logical choice, but of course she nailed it. The incredibly strange duo of Leah Thompson and Rob Schneider as the villains of the movie to give it conflict might be what killed it for a lot of people, is my guess. I don't know, because
they had to have
a conflict in these things, and the conflict is always what sort of drowned out these movies that people didn't like, because they had to give a plot, because plot function was, I was going to say especially in the 90s, but since the inception of film, conflict is, people need that, people need a plot, people need something, a story. So it needed a story, and that's when you call in the hack writers to be like, what's the deal here? What are they up against? Again, I don't have a problem with it because it's the Beverly Hillbillies. I didn't want to watch them go through some sort of existential crisis or to go wander out into the woods in some Terrence Malick fiasco. They needed some low-key villains to make trouble for what's been established and then be thwarted in the end with a monster truck, I believe.
I don't remember.
But Leah Thompson turning up the sexiness like she never had before was, God, this is a sexy movie. Think of the broads in this movie. Dolly's in it, for Christ.
What good is wealth and fame, fine clothes and diamond rings? It just don't mean a thing if you ain't got love. But you can have your cake and icing too, if you got someone to